want to call this meeting to order. This is our Weber County Commission meeting dated today, the 26th day of November, 5:30. And we're 1 minute late, so we did really good tonight. We welcome you all here. I'm Commissioner Scott Jenkins. To my right is Commissioner Jim Harvey, and to my left is Commissioner Gage Frohr. And it's good to have you all here. We welcome you. Our invocation tonight will be offered by Scott Park. Our pledge will be offered by Jim Harvey. And I will give you the thought of the day. So, Mr. Park.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are very grateful indeed for this opportunity which we have to gather together to discuss the various matters relating to the county and the county government. We are grateful, Father, for this freedom which we have and the ability which we so often take for granted for being able to meet and discuss civic matters. We are mindful of those around the world who do not have this privilege and this opportunity, and we pray for them, Father. We pray that Thy Spirit will be with us, that we may be honest and discuss those things which would be of importance, and that we may do so in a way that would please Thee. And we pray for this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Audience, if you'd please rise and repeat the pledge after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. So my thought of the day has to do with a visit that Mrs. Freegang and me made yesterday afternoon to Youth Futures. I'm amazed. You go down there and see this nonprofit that are out there trying to, they are an overnight care facility for youth that are homeless. And they're the only one north of Salt Lake. So there isn't one in Davis County, there isn't one in Box Elder County, only in Weber County. So we end up getting kids, well, not only from north of Salt Lake. She told us that once in a while, if they don't have room in Salt Lake or in Utah County, that they'll call us and she'll go down and pick them up. So they're full today. Now, I don't know if we didn't go over her history, but she told us how many hours and nights of occupancy they give out there for these youth. And it was a clean, well-run operation. They're getting ready to do a remodel on their bathrooms. They've got all those people in there and only have 2 bathrooms. Yeah, so right now they're up to their eyeballs. And I told them that I'd donate the tubs, toilets, showers, and lavs for the addition. So I got to talk to my brothers about that now. Mark Glenn, it's coming your way. So anyway, Merry Christmas. But you know, it's the time of the year that you do that kind of stuff. But it's impressive to me that as a county, Weber County, and as a city, Ogden City, that we have that strong of a nonprofit group in this city. You know, in our local homeless coordinating council, we have 42 members of that, and we have 73 in the county nonprofits that are associated with that.
Yes.
Approximately 73 in the county that are associated with our local homeless coordinating council and all the things we do in the county. So we just organized our Center of Excellence, and we're getting that off the ground, and I'm telling you, the county is moving ahead on dealing with homelessness, our intergenerational poverty, and all the other issues that are being handled right now, primarily by Ogden City and the people in it. But I just want you to know we're well on our way, and I'm really proud of what's happening in our county. And I don't want anybody to think that it's the county that's doing Youth Futures. This is done by an independent group who are nonprofit folks, and we're just trying to help support them. That's why I mentioned them tonight. We are trying to help support them. Their address is 2760 Adams Avenue, and they are accepting all the donations you can give them, cash or otherwise. and they're doing a marvelous job. So there you go. That's my 2 bits for today. Yep. Well, it's good to have you all here. The very first thing we go to is public comment. And so at the beginning of this meeting, we open this up for your public comment. If you'll give us your name and your address where you live and hold your comments to 3 or so minutes, we'd appreciate it. Time's now yours if anybody'd like to get up and comment tonight. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Dave Shoup. My address is 3112 East, 4100 North in Liberty, Utah. And I'm
Thank you.
here tonight, gentlemen, to hopefully get the county's help in resolving some problems that I've noticed. And one of the things, if you turn around and read the words on the wall behind you under public trust, I can read them for you right here. It says, to conduct the affairs of the county government in such a way as to nurture public confidence. And a while ago, I think it was February of 2018, I stood here and mentioned the same words to the commissioners that were on the board then. And quite frankly, you haven't done anything to build my confidence. You may be aware of the situation that I've been put in with Weber County, and my hope is that we can foster some change. I've only got 3 minutes, so I'll try to make this brief. Gentlemen, my definition of theft is taking something that is not yours and keeping it for yourself. And if you look at my case, that's exactly what Weber County has done. They've taken something that wasn't theirs and kept it for yourself. Not only did you do it, you did it knowingly. And I can tell you that because Lane Browning, who works for the assessor's office, came to my house, saw that the square footage was wrong, but when he went back to the assessor's office, there was no change made. You guys relied on me as the taxpayer to come and fix the mistakes that the assessor had made. And I think that's part of what needs to change. The other thing I think that needs to change is when I make a mistake, I'm held accountable. Matter of fact, there's a penalty to be paid. If I pay my taxes late, you charge me 1% of the taxable value of my home. But when Weber County makes a mistake, there's no penalty. When I went through this with you before, you paid me back 4 years of the 18 years that you overcharged me. I understand the statute of limitations, but there was no penalty or consequence. And so what that does is that sets up what's exactly opposite of what's written on your wall. It allows your assessor to make mistakes and get paid for them. And that's wrong. That's dead wrong. To allow that incentivizes your assessor to make mistakes in the wrong direction so that Weber County gets more dollars. And that needs to change. Third thing, live within your budget. Don't widen the plate. Time and again, I see where government passes a proposal to say, let's tax just a little bit more. We don't have enough to cover the mistakes, and so we're gonna widen that plate. And you know what I'm talking about because I gave a little deal on home plate. Home plate never changes size from kindergarten all the way up to the pros. And so what gives my county government the ability to widen that plate, to make it so that, hey, we didn't make our budget, so we'll increase our budget. We'll make it bigger instead of tightening your belt and living within the budget that your constituents, me, folks like me, expect you to do. So those are the changes I would make. Make sure that we don't incentivize the county assessor to make mistakes. Take responsibility for your actions. And bottom line, quit making the taxpayer atone for your mistakes. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Shoup. We appreciate that. The 4 years we paid you back included interest, didn't it?
Only after I fought for it.
Yeah, my recollection was we offered it. Thank you. We appreciate that. Very good. Next item on the agenda is F, and that is a presentation by Northern Utah Economic Development Update, Mr. Chris Roybal. We welcome you here, Chris.
Thank you.
You bet.
Good to be with you. Thanks for letting me give you a brief update. And if I go over my time, just hit the eject button and I'll be out of here. We've been at this about 5 months. I think we're ahead of schedule. I really do. I think we're off to a really good start. But let me just kind of outline a couple things that we've been doing, and happy to take a couple questions. The official name and logo and all of that will be finished about mid-December. That's a little bit slower than what I'd like, but because our website's not quite ready, we don't have a place to put it quite yet anyway. So the website's coming along. Our web developers are doing a good job. It just takes a long time. The two main components of that website that I want to draw your attention to is the real estate. One, the real estate database. It's going to be first rate, A+. We've hired a real estate intern. We're going to outline all of the properties that are not listed with CoStar and the other real estate brokerage firms, so that any piece of land, roughly 5 acres and up, is going to be showcased on that website. So a lot of this is just about exposure for Northern Utah. So that'll be done, and we need to showcase our labor pool a little bit better up here. We've got 600,000 people that live in the region. We've got 250,000 to 300,000 people that are working either in or out of here. Now, I just spent, 45 minutes driving up here from Farmington, so we need to keep some of those people here that are exiting and coming back up here, and so that's a lot of what we're doing. But that should all come together toward the end of December. I wanted to give you all, I think you've seen some earlier versions of this, but this is an updated copy of our promotional piece for Northern Utah. Good. Get your red pen out. We don't print but 20, 30 of these at a shot or whenever we need them for a trade show or for an event. But I will tell you that on December 9th, this document is going to go to 800 national site selectors to kind of showcase Northern Utah. So if you've got some suggestions, things you want changed, let us know. We can update it and make it better. We want these site selectors to know who we are up here in Northern Utah, and then quarterly we will be sending them new things about Northern Utah, who the companies are that are expanding up here, what's going on. And so this is about exposure and letting them know, who we are. I wanted to mention, too, we just finished a Northern California marketing trip. We had both representatives from Weber and Davis, Holland, and Ken Anderson from Davis were there with me. We had 6 really top-notch meetings over a 2-day period. 4 of the 6 site selectors asked for additional data from us as a follow-up. That's a good sign. They weren't bored with us there. They were interested in Northern Utah. They hadn't heard specifically much about it outside of the Salt Lake City marketplace, and so that's what we need to do more of. Quite frankly, we could do that just about every month, and it wouldn't be too much. So in January, we'll be in Southern California doing the same kind of thing. So all good news on that front. I wanted to mention, too, in terms of exposure for Northern Utah, I think we've been out. I think we've met with every major brokerage house, every major construction company, all the major banks, law firms, developers. We've had people come up and look at our market that have never been up here. And by the middle of December, we will have had all of the top developers up into our market, and they're interested. We're a little weak on office development up here. Industrial is pretty strong, but we'd like to see more office development, and we've got some good opportunities here in Ogden and in Farmington, and so we're continuing to drive them up here. They wouldn't come if they weren't interested. These guys are busy. They've got other projects, and so we're happy that they're coming, and we just need to keep pushing them up here. I wanted to mention a couple things, a couple projects since July that have happened. You know about Northrop, that announcement. Hopefully that will become official here in the next couple of months with that contract that they're working on. But the good news is we've got other follow-on activity from that. We've got another aerospace vendor that's looking at about a $10 to $20 million capital investment that's looking in the region. That's good. We have a 50-employee technology company that has basically decided on the Ogden Valley area. They're just honing in on a site. I think a lot of you know about the Amer expansion of about 100 jobs up here over at BDO. That's good news. Mention a couple of others just in the region. The Arbinger Consulting headquarter building, so about a 40,000 square foot building in Farmington, announced a couple of months ago. There's another big movement at the Freeport Center in Clearfield that's going to free up about 500,000 square feet. So that's going to be good news for some more industrial opportunities. There's another industrial user that's looking at a $40 million capital investment expansion in the Davis County area too. So we like to think that anything good happening in the region is good for everybody. Something good happens in Ogden, it's good for our friends in Davis County and vice versa. And I think we've got a good teaming arrangement. I just met with the Davis County Commissioners. They feel the same way. Their staff feels the same way. Holland Wilbanks has done a great job representing Weber County. You guys need to know that. She's done a great job with the development community, with the real estate brokerage community on these marketing trips, whether it's a trade show or with the site selectors. And so you can know that you're definitely getting your money's worth with the activity that she's been putting toward the effort. A couple of other things. You know about the property out in West Weber County. We're looking at several different options for that development. There's lots of acreage out there. We're looking at an upgrade with an engineering study to go along some of these other things that you've all been involved with in terms of industrial activity out that way. That's a long-term play, but we need to start working on it now. BDO still got some expansion opportunities with industrial, but we want to start seeing that next phase of development for industrial out that way. Another good thing that I think just to note is that all of the municipalities between Davis and Weber are all on board. They love what we're doing. They need the help. Most of them don't have a full-time economic developer. So starting in January, we're going to have quarterly meetings with the local municipalities to sort of train them on economic development, give them updates as to what's happening with our activity, and they're excited. They want to come. So a lot of times it's the city manager, city planner, or somebody in between because they don't have a full-time economic developer, but we're sort of adding a little bit of muscle to their local groups, and you know, they're excited about it. So anyway, I will stop there, and I think you know, answer any questions that you might have. But I think we're off to a pretty good start. We just need to keep the momentum. We need to keep the level of communication out there and the exposure out there for what's happening up here, you know, for job creation, and hopefully we'll see a lot more success, you know, in the coming months. It's going to take some time, but I think we're off to a good start.
Great, that's a wonderful
questions,
report.
Commissioners?
Commissioners, any questions?
Not really a question, just a comment. Chris, I think you're doing an excellent job. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts with what you do with economic development, from the brokerage firms to the site selectors,
Right.
working with the counties. It's basically a matter of letting everybody know, including the broker, site selectors, all these companies, that we have the best location between Davis and Weber in the state. And I think you're making a good effort to do that. If you take a look at Weber County, we've got obviously the Northrop Grumman, we've got MITA to the south, we have potential mega sites to the west, and a lot of opportunities here within the city for office development. So I'm a little prejudiced, but I think we are the place to be for the future, and with your efforts, I'm confident we'll get there. So
Thank you.
again,
No,
thank you for what you do.
Thank you. No, totally agree. Totally agree.
Thank you, Commissioner. You know, I agree with this too. I think, Chris, your point on we're ahead of schedule, I agree we are. I think if you would have said 6 months ago that this is where you hope to be today, we'd laughed. We'd said there's no way. But I think that's exactly what's happened. And I do believe the commercial markets in Salt Lake are noticing this now. They're watching us and looking what's happening north, and I'm excited. I am excited what's happening. That's good stuff. So we thank you for that report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Commissioner?
You know, I appreciate what you've done in leading this team. Having been around Weber County government now directly for more than 25 years, it appears that we've had more people looking at us in the last 6 months than we've had in the last 6 years. And that's encouraging. There's an excitement about Weber County, and we've earned it. A lot of wonderful people here, and a great place to bring employees who want to live here as well as work. And so we're really fortunate here. Thanks for doing the work you've done, Chris.
Well, thank you, and I'll just say a lot of our success is due to your leadership. I mean, if we didn't have your support and the Davis County Commission team's support, I mean, this is a team effort. This is a team sport. We can't do this as one individual, one city, one county, and your leadership has really made a really big difference. So, thank you, and we'll continue to give you all reports whenever you need them.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks.
You know, I should mention in this that former Commissioner Ebert's here, and this was part of his vision that we're just trying to carry on.
Thank you.
Very good. Next item is the consent items, and we've got a ton of them tonight. So it's going to take a few minutes to get through all these. First of all, item 1 is request for approval of the warrants 2205 to 2226 and 445078 to 445358 in the amount of $1,226,259. Item G2 is a request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $331,246. Item 3 is a request for approval of the minutes for our meeting held November 19th of this year. Item 4 is request for approval of new business licenses. Item 5 is request for approval of a retirement agreement by and between Weber County and Kimberly Perry. Item 6, request for approval of a sell surplus property, parcel number 04-040-0062. Item 7 is a request for Homeland Security for approval to surplus a Smith's Detection APD 2000 chemical warfare agent detector. Why we ever needed that is beyond me, but we got it. Item 8 is a request for the Information Technology Department for approval to surplus computers and equipment. Item 9 is a request for Ogden Eccles Conference Center for approval to surplus 19 office chairs. Item 10 is a request for approval of modification number 2 to the TAP funds cooperative agreement between Weber County and Utah Department of Transportation. Item 11 is a request for the Weber County Tax Review Committee to refund $364.48 to Keaton Southwick on parcel 15-328-0001 for discrepancy in acreage. Item 12 is a request for approval of ratification of the following ramp grants: WCCA Perry Egyptian Theater, Weber County Parks, Excellence in the Community, Ogden Musical Theater, and Indoor Archery Range Building. For, I think that's for the build-out of the inside of the archery center. And that is all the consent items. Commissioners, requests or comments? Or?
One comment, if I
Yes.
could, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Harvey.
I'd take personal privilege, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
I worked with Miss Perry for 24 years out at the Golden Spike Arena. She was the one that did all the food and beverage out there for all the tens of thousands of people, our contracts we did, or millions of people who would have come through there over the 25 years.
it's just especially, I'm grateful for her service, and I hope she's got a good experience with her next chapter of her life. So just a personal shout out to Kim and her family, a lot of sacrifice. Most every weekend, most people don't understand. We're going to have the parade going down here. The Christmas parade's happening this Saturday night, and we invited the employees to come here before, but all the employees working for Culture, Parks, and Recreation will be busy on Saturday and Friday and Saturday night working double shifts because of the events at the I-Sheet, Perry's Egyptian Theater, and Ogden Eccles Conference Center, the Golden Spike Event Center, and all of our facilities. They're going. It's just, we really appreciate that. And most people don't realize that our other facilities go when they're celebrating other different things. And so we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner. That was a great comment. Ricky, do you want to give us your opinion and feed on the warrants for today and the purchase orders?
Absolutely. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. We issued 22 purchase orders this week for $331,000. The vast majority of that amount, almost 70%, or $227,000, is for the elections office, and that will go to purchase a mail ballot verifier piece of equipment that will dramatically increase the efficiency of processing the ballots and the security. We had 2 purchase orders that accounted for 11% each of the total amount, about $36,000. One is for the I-Sheet, and that is towards purchase of a new compressor. And then one is for the conference center, and that will go towards labor, food, repairs, and equipment. As far as checks, we issued 303 checks this week for $1.2 million. 35% of that amount, or $427,000, was actually an escrow release to Geneva Rock for the work that they did at the Overlook subdivision. 15%, or $190,000, is our monthly contribution to the Weber Human Services Organization. 9%, or $114,000, is housing payments made on behalf of Weber Housing Authority. And then 7%, or $86,000, is our monthly contribution to the Convention Visitors Bureau. And that is all I had.
Good. So the purchase orders, the large one there for the compressor, or the was actually an additional price, right? Because we were going to repair the compressor originally, and then the bearings had ruined the shaft on it, and so we ended up having to add to it and buying a brand new compressor.
The ammonia had gotten, at the last fault, the ammonia had gotten all through the machine and ruined everything in there, so it necessitated the purchase of a new compressor. And we need a compressor to keep the ice up.
And all in all, it wasn't that much more than the repair, so we're probably okay. Very good. Any questions on that?
You ready for a motion?
I'm ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve the consent items as presented.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the consent items. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It approved. Thank you, Commissioners. Next item on our agenda is the, I need a motion to enter into a public hearing. This is a public hearing that we're holding tonight on our budget.
I'll make a motion that we move to a public hearing to present the budget.
Second.
Very good. I have a motion and a second to adjourn our public meeting and go into a public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. With that, Mr. Scott Park, you're first up on that agenda to make your presentation.
Thank you, Commissioners. Let me just pull up the presentation really quick. So we have 2 things we're doing tonight. One, we're going to talk first about the Weber County's 2020 operating and capital budget. And as part of that, we have an adjustment that we're proposing to the Municipal Services Fund, which we'll get to after we talk about the main funds. So just as a brief reminder to everybody here, Weber County collects taxes on behalf of approximately 90 separate entities. So when you get a tax bill and you see the total of $2,000 or $3,000 at the bottom of that, the majority of that is not going to stay with Weber County. The Weber County Treasurer's Office collects that money and then distributes the vast majority of it, or the majority of it, out to the school districts, to cities and towns, or to special service districts. So up here you can see that On average, we keep about 22 cents on the dollar of the property tax money that comes into Weber County for county operations. The rest of it we just pass through to other entities. So when we look at what Weber County government in total is doing, we're pulling in about $212 million. About 25% of that is for charges for services, so that's fees we charge entities. 26% is from property tax, and about 32% is from sales tax. Now, this is countywide, and a lot of that money has restrictions from the state, so it's not like we get to just take all that $212 million and decide where it's going to go. In fact, if you look here where we spend the money, 28% of it's going to streets and public improvements. That's money that is collected under Weber County's taxing authority and then passed straight through to UDOT. We never actually see the money. So even though we have to report the revenue as though it was our revenue and the expenditures as though they're our expenditures, we don't even touch the money. It goes straight from the tax commission to UDOT. Public safety makes up 21% of that, and general government about 19% of that, and you can see some various other smaller percentages. When we come down to what Weber County Commissioners actually control, and that is most of the general fund. So here we're going to drill into the general fund a little bit. This is where you guys actually have some control over where the money's going. So the general fund is going to collect about $80.2 million next year, according to our estimates. About half of that is coming from property taxes. About 17% of that comes from sales taxes, and the rest comes from charges for services. So that's fees that we charge users for the services they're receiving. When we look at how we're going to spend that, the majority of that, 56%, is going to go towards public safety, primarily the jail. 33% of that is going to go towards general government, and then you can see some of the other smaller amounts. Conservation development's about 1%, health and welfare is about 3%, and then transfers to other funds accounts for about 7%, of which most of that goes to our capital projects funds for the repair and maintenance of our facilities. If you look at it a slightly different way, employee compensation, or if you look at that same $77 million expenditures, employee compensation is about 2/3 of that. So basically the county's paying employees. That's the biggest single expense that the county has, is the employees that perform the services. So that's your correction facilities officers, that's your assessors, that's the staff of the treasurer's office, that's the staff of the commission office or the clerk auditor's office. That's primarily where the money goes, and about 33% or a third of that is also going to supplies, office equipment, and different things of that nature. So a couple of items in this tentative budget. The Commission has approved $3.1 million of increases for employee compensation. What that's made up of is about 45 cents per hour, and that's going to go to the employees to help offset the increased cost of health and dental insurance. So our health insurance premiums went up by 8.5%. Our dental insurance premiums went up by a little over 5%. And we figured out what that was on average. It's about 45 cents an hour for each employee. So that's the cost of living increase. Employees are also eligible to receive up to a 3% of the wages for pay for performance. So they've all set goals at the first of the year. Based off of how well they've performed in their goals, they can receive an increase up to 3%. This budget also includes some repairs to capital facilities. So we're going to give the jail about a $1.1 million upgrade. We're also going to build a new storage facility out at the Sheriff's Complex for about $900,000. Culture Parks and Recs was given about $1.2 million for repairs and upgrades to their facilities. That includes the Conference Center, the Ice Sheet, the Golden Spike Event Center, and some of the various parks. The parking structure, a lot of this money was already in the budget from last year. We haven't started work on the parking structure, but we've got $4 million saved so far to go towards repairing or replacing that parking structure. And we have about $2.7 million of other expenditures. One nice thing that we're doing this year is we're setting aside $1.7 million into a repair and replacement fund that will be used to help us maintain the buildings going forward. So we actually have some money saved and can do some planned and preventative maintenance on those buildings. I just wanted to note there's a couple of things that changed from the tentative budget to the final budget. One was the addition of that new storage facility at the Sheriff's Complex for $900,000. We also have dedicated $600,000 towards finishing the second floor of the Weber Morgan Health Department Annex building, and that space will then be leased out. And then we have $200,000 that are going to the repair and maintenance of trails, and that's coming from our Prop 1 funds. So every year we go out and we look forward 5 years into the future to see how Weber County is going to do in 5 years. Are we on the right track? So I'm happy to show on the general fund that we are definitely on the right track. So as you look at this slide, you see a red line down at the bottom. That's our minimum fund balance. We do not want to go below that red line. You see the green line at the top, that's our ideal fund balance. We don't want to go much above that fund balance line. And you can see the blue line in the middle, which is where our projected fund balance is going to be. So that's going to be right where we want it. We have a healthy rainy day fund. We're going to be able to respond to any unforeseen circumstances that come up. And this fund balance gives us the best bond rating, the best credit rating. So if we ever have to go out and issue another bond, we're going to get a very competitive interest rate, the best in the nation. We have a couple of other funds that we work on.
Mr. Park?
Yes, sir.
Could you stop just a second and go back to that previous slide? Now, if I'm a taxpayer in this county, I'm saying to myself, okay, I understand that you're healthy now. You've just showed that on that slide. Why does that have to be at 35%? Why can't that be at 25 or 30% instead of that high?
So we could operate on a very thin fund balance. The problem is there's a couple of things. One, if we ever have to borrow money, the bond rating agencies want us to have this fund balance within this range. It's an industry standard, and it gives us the ability to react. Instead of having to get a high interest loan, we can get a lower interest loan. But the other real benefit to this is we collect all of our property tax at the end of the year. We're collecting the property taxes right now for this whole year, but we have expenditures throughout the whole year. We spend our money on salaries and wages, which is our biggest expense. So every year, or every month, every pay period, our expenses are growing, but we collect our money at the end of the year. Having a fund balance this high means that we have enough cash to get through the year without having to borrow any money for a short-term financing till we get our money at the end of the year. So this saves us a lot of money in our interest costs as well. It used to be years and years ago that we had to go out and borrow money about 6 months before the end of the year because we didn't have enough cash to get through the year. This healthy fund balance prevents us from having to do that.
Thank you.
So there are a couple of other funds that I want to talk about. One is our library fund. So the library facility built a new building in Roy, and they also remodeled the building in North Ogden and in Maine, here downtown Ogden City, and added a new floor that's now open to the public. And when they did that, we added a total of 20 new FTEs. So our FTE count went up by 20. Plus we have additional operating expenses because now we have an additional building. So we built up the fund balance over the last few years because of this reason. We've anticipated this. And so we're watching and we're projecting that the fund balance is going down. We're going to start eating into that fund balance. If you remember when we voted in the bond, when the citizens voted in the bond a few years ago, we didn't increase taxes at all to maintain those buildings or any operations or to fund the employees for those buildings. All that is coming out of the fund balance. And so we're watching that over the next 5 to 7 years. It's possible that we may need to start considering a tweak in the rate, but that's still 5 to 7 years in the future. We just want to make sure that it's on the radar so that everyone's aware of it, and we continue to watch and monitor it, and we'll deal with it as we get closer. The paramedic fund is another fund that's very healthy. It's got a big fund balance in there. It was built up over the last few years, and we have a plan where we're trying to responsibly spend down that money by not collecting as much in additional taxes, and also the cost of our equipment, the cost of our contracted services continues to go up slightly. So we're maintaining that, and we have a nice healthy fund balance in our paramedic fund, which will allow us to respond to any issues that pop up. Now, when you compare this fund to the other funds, so the paramedic fund, it looks like a lot at 100% of its expenditures. We're talking about $2 to $3 million here, whereas when we're talking about the general fund, we're talking about $20 million. So even though this percentage looks high, it's not that high when you consider a paramedic unit is as $250,000 to $500,000 just for the unit itself. Here's our health fund. Our health fund, we are, again, in a planned spend down of their fund balance to get them back down into our ideal range. We watch that every year. We're making sure that their revenues and their expenditures balance, and we don't see any need for a tax increase for the next 5 years for the health department. Now, the Municipal Services Fund, that's the fund that we've had a lot of conversations on over the last few months. And this slide is slightly different from the one that was on the presentation. I added one more line to it so you could see. So the red line is our minimum fund balance line. That's our desired fund balance according to the county policy and our industry standards. The blue line and the yellow line represent where those 2 points meet right in 2018. That's where we were. So we were below our minimum fund balance to begin the year. Now, if we don't do anything, if we don't do any tax increase, if we just leave everything exactly as it is, we're going to follow that yellow line, which means the fund is going to run out of money by the end of 2020 or maybe January of 2021. So it would basically be bankrupt. At that point, the state law kicks in, and it basically starts telling us how we're going to operate that fund. So the reason why we've been running out of money in that fund is when we first set it up in 2013, it was never really set up to be financially stable, fiscally solvent in the long run. And it was just kind of balanced from year to year, and we never really were able to address some of the underlying issues that were causing this imbalance. But so what we're planning to do now is make an adjustment to the tax rate in the Municipal Services Fund. So the plan is the county would lower its general operations tax rate. That's the tax rate that goes to everybody in the county by $500,000. So that's about a little over 1%, 1.2%. So everybody in the entire county, everybody, including the Upper Valley, Lower Valley, unincorporated areas, is going to see a tax decrease. The Upper Valley, or excuse me, the unincorporated residents will then see a tax increase by about $358,000, $360,000. So we're shifting the tax rate from the general fund to the unincorporated areas. In fact, most people will see a decrease in that, and the county is going to get less money overall with this tax shift than it would have otherwise if we had just left the tax rates alone. The reason why we're doing this is because in our review of the finances, we determined that the general county was actually subsidizing the unincorporated areas. So here's a map of the unincorporated areas. So these areas in yellow, I don't know if you can see the little cursor up here, this area up in yellow, the Upper Valley, and then also out here in western Weber County, those are areas that do not belong to any particular city. Weber County government operates those areas in a municipal services fund and provides the services that cities would normally provide to their residents. That includes services such as police protection and animal services, road maintenance, stormwater management, planning, zoning, engineering services, code enforcement, building permits, building inspections, building licenses, and the sort. Now, state law requires that those people in a municipal area or an unincorporated area have to pay for the entire cost of their services. It's not fair for the county to subsidize those areas, and it's also not fair for those areas to subsidize the county. Everybody has to pay for the services that they're receiving. So when we looked at this more closely, I just want to point out a couple of the areas that the state statute requires that the Municipal Services Fund pays. And they require them to pay for their operation and maintenance of their cost of equipment, the cost for renting facilities, and the administrative costs, such as the legal costs, the attorney costs, the accounting costs, the human resources costs. What we found, excuse me, I went too far. What we found when we looked at the Municipal Services Fund is that they were paying their direct expenditures, but they were not paying any of their indirect expenditures. So we had a lawyer that would spend approximately 2/3 of his time on issues in the Upper and Lower Valley, but none of his time was being charged to the Municipal Services Fund. We found that our human resources time, they have expenditures as they take care of all the county employees, but they weren't allocating any of their time to the Municipal Services Fund. Same with accounting and IT. So what we're doing is we are correcting that, and we're going to allocate to the Municipal Services Fund their fair share of those costs. Now, when we put this out, we had a couple of open houses. We received a couple of questions. One of the questions was, is this shift intended to subsidize snow removal at Powder Mountain? And the answer to that is no, this has nothing to do with snow removal at Powder Mountain. Powder Mountain snow removal is already paid for by the Municipal Services Fund. This isn't shifting any money around for that. The second question that we received was, what's the county doing to make sure that all those secondary homes in the Ogden Valley are paying the correct tax? And we worked with the assessors on this, and anytime a home changes ownership, the assessor sends out a letter asking whether this is a primary home or a secondary home. If it is marked as a primary home, then they have to prove that it's a primary home to get that residential exemption. So the assessor's office estimates that about 60% of the homes up in the Upper Valley are primary residents and about 40% are secondary homes. Secondary homes are taxed at a higher tax rate. They don't get a residential exemption. So the assessor's office continues to do all it can to make sure that those secondary homeowners up there are paying the correct tax. But for our purposes, it doesn't really matter, because if it's a secondary home or primary home, we're not allowed to collect any additional money. If a home goes from a primary home to a secondary home, we don't get to collect any additional money on that because it's not a new building. And if it goes from a secondary home to a primary home, we don't lose any money for that either. We're a revenue neutral state, which means the tax rate's adjusted automatically to account for those things. So the assessor's office has no incentive to mark a home as a secondary home versus a primary home because we don't get any additional money for that. Just like they don't have an incentive to overstate the value of a home or understate the value of a home because we don't get any additional revenue for that.
But those homes that are not primary, that are secondary homes that pay a higher rate, they do help lower our percentage.
That is true. So it does shift the amount of taxes.
So indirectly, it does help us a little.
Well, it helps the residents up there because,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, I meant that. When I
Yeah.
said us, I meant those residents
yes,
living in this
it
town.
does help the residents because we want to make sure that each resident pays their fair share, but the county doesn't get any additional money for that. It's just the allocation between the citizens. So what the county is proposing is to do a 100% tax increase on the municipal services line on the unincorporated areas. Now that sounds like a lot. We're not saying we're going to increase the taxes 100%. So if you have a $2,000 tax bill, you're not going to be paying $4,000. What we're talking about is if you go to the grocery store and you're buying eggs and bread and milk and you go up and you go to pay for your groceries, we're not doubling the price of your grocery bill. We're saying the price of eggs is going up. It's doubling, not the entire grocery bill. So what does that mean? It means every resident in Weber County is going to see a tax decrease on their general county fund line. 6% of the residents, or those who live in the unincorporated areas of Weber County, are going to see an increase on their municipal services line or their unincorporated services fund line. And what that increase would be, the average value of a home in the unincorporated area is about $403,000. So that means the tax rate would jump from $29.26 to $58.52 a year. So I just wanted to show what that looks like in comparison to all the other taxes in the county. There are two cities in the county that do not have a tax rate, Marriott-Slaterville and West Haven City. They have no property tax because they have huge commercial developments and they're able to survive on their sales tax revenue. But of every other city in the county that has a tax rate, the Municipal Services Fund currently is the lowest by far. In fact, even after doubling that rate, we will still be the lowest by far. The next closest one is Plain City. So when you compare those taxes, you see that, yes, a 100% tax increase sounds bad, and $20 is, I mean, we're not trying to minimize it. It is a tax increase to those areas as we try to get them to pay more their share of what those costs are. But we're not raising their taxes 100%. So I want to just go back to that 5-year slide. So now you see this line in blue and the line in yellow. The line in yellow is if we don't do anything. The line in blue is if we do this 100% tax increase. And you see that it still doesn't get us above that red line. It just kind of drags out that decrease. It slows down the decrease of that line. It flattens out that line a little bit, but it still doesn't solve the problem. So one of the questions that we're asked is, why aren't we just fixing it right now? Why are we only doing one step? And the answer to that is because we don't know what's happening with western Weber County right now. We have a potential annexation from Plain City to a large portion of that area, and then we also have a competing petition to form a city out there. And we didn't feel it would be appropriate to raise the taxes high and then have a good portion of that go away and then have a good portion of the services that we provide go away and then readjust the tax rate. So what we're doing is raising the tax rate just enough to get us through until we figure out what's going to go on down there. And once we know whether Plain City is going to annex or whether the city is going to form, we'll be able to reevaluate the costs and make any adjustments we need to at that time.
Well, it might also be mentioned that West Haven has just sent out a letter to the residents in their Pioneer boundary area that their annex, or their declaration has shown them in, and they're asking if they would like to annex to them as well. So nobody really knows what's going to happen out there right now.
And that's why I think this course of action is the best. It ensures that the fund is going to have enough money to get us through the next couple of years, but we don't have to raise the taxes higher than we need to. We can watch and see what's actually going to happen. We're going to give us a little bit of time to right-size the services that we provide. If we no longer have to plow half the roads in the valley, maybe we can look at the number of dump trucks that we have and gives us some time to react to that so we don't have to raise the taxes higher than we need.
Very good. I might also mention on this that people say, well, why don't you raise it more? Well, there's a reality here, and that is that nobody would vote to raise taxes more than 100% one year. We just refused to do it. We felt like it was crazy. And so until we could figure out what was going to happen, we just didn't have the votes. That's that plain and simple. Commissioner Jenny, you want to comment on that?
Until we know, because of, we had a new master plan study funded for the beginning of this year to take place. And with the petition, which we respect, from the people of Western Weber County, it just wasn't a good thing to proceed and jump in the way of that, so we let that happen with the Lieutenant Governor's office. Because of that, we don't know what's going to happen out there, and it wouldn't be responsible for us to set something that doesn't have a definite moving forward. So we're waiting to see how that pans out between that and the annexation, the possible annexation of Plain City and now West Haven. So there are a couple things in the air, like just was stated, that we need to. We need to see what's happening. This gets us. This solves our problem, our emergency problem right now. This is a good thing for 94%, and it helps the other 6%, which includes me, pay my share. Thank you.
And Commissioner Ford.
And Commissioner Ford.
Gage, you want to say something?
Well, I think Scott hit it on the head. I think this is good tax policy based upon our situation right now, not knowing what's going to happen out west. There's no reason to increase a tax shift on in an area that we may not know what's going to happen for another 12 months. At the same time, this is not saying that we may not have a shift in the future if for some reason the cities out there do not come about. Then this is obviously, if you can see by that chart, this will be something that will have to be addressed in the future. So it's no guarantee that this goes away, but the proper tax policy at this point in time is to wait and then see what happens with Western Weber County.
So, Scott, I didn't cut you off. You were done, weren't you?
Yeah, we're basically done with that unless you have any specific questions on the budget.
I do. I have
Okay.
a specific question I'm sure everybody in the audience is thinking right now. And that is, you just showed us the general fund, and it's healthy and it's about right where we want it. Why don't you take money out of the general fund and fund that municipal services?
That's a good question. The reason why we don't do that is because it actually violates state statute to do that. So I'll go back up to this slide. It's not fair, if you consider what is fair, it's not fair to have Ogden City residents pay for their Ogden City services and then also help pay for the unincorporated area residents to have those same city services. They're basically being double taxed if we were to allow that. In fact, the state statute prohibits that and says it's unlawful for the county to use general fund dollars to subsidize the services to the unincorporated residents of a county. The unincorporated residents have to pay their own way. The cities have to pay their own way. The cities can't get help from the unincorporated areas. The unincorporated areas can't get help from the cities. Everybody has to pay for the services that they're receiving.
Thank you, sir. So you know it's interesting. The people in the proposed new city just had a study done on what it would cost to operate that city. And when we look at our projected shortages in the county and where the municipal services fund needs to be healthy, it was about very little difference from the what the study said out there, where that city needed to be. They were so close, you'd have swore that they come out of the same office. They were so close. And so we've had very few people ask us why we're doing this. They understand. Now, I'm sure most don't agree with it, and then nobody's happy about it. I'm not representing of that, but I am representing very few people who've questioned it because they understand the demographics here and what's taking place.
I would add that study that Zions Bank performed on the feasibility of that city recommended a 270% tax increase in order to make that city financially feasible. And we're doing a 100% shift. So, I mean, we're still not near as what they would be. If they incorporate into a city, they're going to have to raise their own taxes. So it gives you an idea that, you know, the municipal services fund isn't out of whack. In fact, when you look at our tax rate compared to everybody else's tax rate, we're the lowest. Even after doubling it, we're still the lowest. So it's not like we're misusing the funds. We have received questions, well, can't you save your way out of this? We have 2 positions that we've frozen that we haven't hired. We had a turnover in our engineering and our building inspection. We've frozen. We haven't rehired 2 positions, but this accounts for those 2 positions. The problem is that they just have been subsidized for so long, it's time for them to pay their fair share.
Should be mentioned here, I believe Plain City, of all the cities who do charge a property tax, Plain City is the cheapest in the entire state, we've been told. So I haven't checked that to identify, but you can see even Plain City below Hooper is fairly cheap. So it's hard to get under Plain City, and we're there substantially. Very good. Thank you, Scott. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Park?
Thank you, Scott.
Very good. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
That's a good. Now, we're going to the public comment portion of this, but it should be noted that on the agenda tonight are two resolutions to approve. The first one is a resolution for the tax shift, which means lowering the general tax for the county by 6% and raising the unincorporated 100%. That's request one, or resolution one. Resolution two is to simply approve the budget for this year. And so those are the two resolutions on the agenda tonight. So we now go to the public comment portion of this meeting. We don't have a huge crowd here tonight. We generally ask that you hold your comments to 3 minutes, but frankly, if you run over a little, there's not enough people here that it's going to cause us too much grief. So if you'd like to comment, please state your name and your address, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Gentlemen of the board, my name is Gary Haas. I live in Wolf Creek in the unincorporated area of Eden, and I'm glad Scott is here because otherwise I was going to ask for the sheriff to be here because, to paraphrase Mr. Foyer's comments in last Standard Examiner last month, basically he said that the state requires that we pay our fair share. I agree. There's nothing wrong with that. If we did, I wouldn't pay any school tax. I don't have any kids in school. I never did and never will, but I understand the reasoning. The other thing that Mr. Scott proposed, and he mentioned in his briefing, a lot of the expenses that we have is for the county sheriffs. Mr. Foyer said that, paraphrased it in the Standard Examiner article, and I agree that the sheriff is a concern, but do they take into consideration any percentage of the time it takes the sheriff to drive to Huntsville, which they pay their own sheriff protection? I know that there's a couple HOAs up in the valley where I live. The Highlands pay the sheriff. The cities, basically in the unincorporated or incorporated parts of Weber County, have a sheriff at every school, as I understand it. Do we consider a percentage of that as the expense of the school budget or the expense of the unincorporated tax? So I'm opposed to this tax. I got tax bills here over 100% that they're going to tax me, 100%. And that is a lot. I agree. I've missed some of the meetings. I wasn't here for some of the town hall meetings. But to raise a tax 100% on people that might not feel that it's worth it. I know that the county jail is the percentage of inmates in the juvenile court system at our municipal courts in Weber County. Are they represented by unincorporated areas, corporate areas? And until we figure that out, I don't support this tax one bit. You show me figures, show me things that tell me that I got to pay this, I will agree. I don't mind paying the school. I understand the benefit. It benefits it all. But just to say that we're going to increase tax on unincorporated areas, which I've done this many times, property taxes, that the unincorporated areas, a lot of the homes, are, especially in the Ogden Valley, are second homes that pay 100%, where I am a resident, I only pay 45 or 55% of that. So I'm urging you guys that might live in unincorporated areas or corporate areas to really consider this tough. It should be fair, like you mentioned before. It should be fair, and you should pay your own way. Well, what is our own way? Without all the data, do we really know? Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Others who'd care to comment? Now's the time. Thank you. We're almost encouraging you to come up. We want to hear from you.
I don't know, you guys don't like to hear from me when I show up to meetings.
Name and address.
Eric South, I live out in Warren, 522 North, 5500 West. So just a basic question for Mr. Park. The presentation that you put up today, will that be available for the public on the county's website?
Yeah, we can make it available for everyone.
Okay. You know, along with all the budgetary numbers, I would request that information be made available. Not in favor of a tax increase. I mean, this is the second one that you guys have, announced. I came to the other one a couple of years ago, and you were standing room only. Tax increase on 911 services again. After went to that meeting as well. So, county needs to live within its means, and also, there's the need to shift. I'm not opposed to people paying their fair share. But by the same token, I live out in unincorporated Weber County. I don't see a whole lot of county services out there. Just general comment. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Others? Please.
Well, good evening, gentlemen. I'm John Prims, living in incorporated Huntsville. And personally, I'd like to thank Scott for his obvious competency and that was shown in his presentation. It's very good work. I myself am a former program manager for Space Command in Los Angeles, and I was responsible for over $350 million just in one program alone. And we would get what we'd call haircuts every once in a while because of the contingencies for Iraq and other problems that we face worldwide. So what we had to do as program managers is within our budget have different scenarios for downsizing. And my first month into the program, I got hit with a $100 million haircut. So we had to readjust our program to fit that. And the gentleman that spoke just before me mentioned about the constant increases in property tax, and I think that we've really got to, and I don't oppose what was presented by Scott tonight at all, but I think we've got to really look closely at the efficiencies of where we are in our different departments so that some departments aren't overspending. We have to hold our departments heads accountable for their expenditures, because maybe we can reduce property taxes somewhere through looking at the different departments overall. And one last comment. I myself am a retiree from the federal government and the military. And in the state of Utah, as a pass-through from my federal taxes, I'm taxed fully on my Social Security and my military pension. And so tax increases are a little bit tender for me and my family because of that. So thank you very much for your time. And again, Scott, you did a great job in your presentation. Thanks very much.
Thanks, John. Thank you. We appreciate your comments. There's still a few of you that haven't stood up if you'd like to. I don't want to end this first.
name's Jim Bond. I live out in Warren. I appreciate the work you guys did out there on the flood and the infrastructure that followed due to federal money, but I'm probably here for all the wrong reasons. I'm here because also the tax increase on the houses out there, the property adjustment. I don't believe my house is worth that much. You'll be hearing from me next year via the forms you've given me. But every little bit hurts. I'm a federal retiree as well. I am a disabled veteran. I do get a break on my taxes, and I do appreciate that. More of a question now for the commission. Do you have a timeline for resolution on this unincorporated Western Weber County city issue?
Mr. Bond, I can answer that. We just got notice that paperwork has been filed and received by the Lieutenant Governor's office for the follow-up on the study. So that has been filed and will be voted on June 30th, I think. June 30th or 31st, whatever. Anyway, at the end of June, that will be on the ballot.
I understood that to be true, that June 30th, that we would vote or have an opportunity to vote, become a city. I heard a number that scared me here tonight in the meeting, a 270% increase for that city. Out there in the rural meetings, we're hearing a 5%, give or take, not 270%. So I'm not sure where that came from. That's a little scary. Plus, the annexation part of Plain City, looking at the north side of the river, could affect some of that. I don't know. Like I say, I might be here for all the wrong reasons, but this gives me an opportunity to talk about an increase. And it sounds like some of us in Lower Weber are paying for services rendered in Upper Weber. Houses cost a little more up there. I know you're trying to raise mine up to that level. I'm not sure I appreciate that, but just opposed to the increase.
Sure.
I don't think there's any additional services that are going to come from this. I do see your state trucks out there plowing the road, and they're doing a good job, in my opinion. I just appreciate the time. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Mr. Bond. We appreciate you coming. I've attended several of those city meetings out there. Now, I haven't attended the ones that Plain City has held or that West Haven's held, if they're holding any. But I have attended several of the others, and they're pretty direct on what it's going to cost and what the ones that have been presented by Zions Bank and their representative, they talk the exact amounts that the study found. And so, yeah, it's been mentioned. Thank you, though. We appreciate that. We appreciate your compliments of the services, and anyway, others who've cared to comment tonight. I think we've given you all the chance now, so I'm going to close this. Okay, commissioners, how about a motion to adjourn the public hearing and go back to reconvene a public meeting?
So move.
Second.
Very good. We have a motion to adjourn the public hearing and reconvene a public meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It passes unanimously. All right. We're now back in our public meeting. I should mention tonight that my opinion, now I'm different. You should understand this. I'm in incorporated, not in unincorporated. I live in Plain City, where the other two commissioners live in unincorporated Weber County. And frankly, I support this shift because I've been supporting through my taxes unincorporated Weber County for several years now. And it's not fair. This should have been done way before now, and we wouldn't be having a 100% tax increase now, and probably another 100 plus in a year or two. This should have been done before, and it hasn't been. And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus here. I wasn't here looking at what the other commissions had to do and what the history was behind it. So they did what they did, and this has only been in, a law was enacted in 2013. So it's only been in effect from that point till now. And so it's been a relatively short period of time, just 6 years. And to Mr. Park's point, we've got our back against the wall. If we don't do something this year, what's going to end up happening is there's consequences in the statute for us not complying. And they kick in automatically. And if we reach that point where we allow the municipal services account to go into the deficit, those things kick in automatically and instantly, just like that. We have to start complying. The state law takes effect, and our power as commissioners taken right away from us. We no longer have power to do anything, and it automatically happens. And we don't want to get to that because it would almost be draconian at that point. So we're trying to get this done before the state law kicks in and forces us into it. And so that's why I'm going to support this tonight, and I want you to know that's why. Commissioners, do either of you care to comment before we go to an action? Commissioner Farrar?
Yeah, let me just make a comment or two. I support this. Obviously, this means a tax increase for myself and my family, along with Commissioner Harvey. I guess 2 or 3 basic principles we need to talk about, at least in my mind. I dealt with state budgets pretty intensely for 12 years, and I can tell you that we analyzed those states' budgets before we increased or decreased taxes very thoroughly, and I can tell you that we did the same thing as a county body here.
Ricky, could you, Ricky,
Ricky,
could
you go outside?
Outside? Thank you. Sorry, folks, we couldn't
Sorry
hear.
about that. So
I apologize for interrupting.
no problem. It needed to happen. So, and when I came into this commission, one of the issues that I was very concerned about was budget, because as I've said on a number of occasions, our highest obligation or duty as county commissioners is to oversee how we spend taxpayer dollars. We have to be prudent in that. At the same time, we have to make good decisions on spending those dollars and what we do for the future. Now, I'm agree with Commissioner Jenkins. I'm not going to cast any blame on the past. We dealt with what we had. We know that municipal service fund was going down. We were required by the state not to do a subsidy from municipality to unincorporated area. And I firmly believe that user fees, that when a person uses services, whatever they are, should pay for them. And that's really what we're saying here, is if you're using a service, whether you agree with that or not, you should pay for it. I have trust and faith in in Scott Park and his department that the services that are being provided are equitably being charged. And I think that we can show that. I can tell you for a fact that this budget that we're about to pass, if it passes, is well managed. We've seen a decrease in our debt. We're paying off 2 bonds, at least 2 bonds over the next 2 years that will decrease our debt load for this county. Now, whether that results in a tax decrease, I'm not here to say one way or the other, but I can say that Commissioner Jenkins and I had a discussion earlier this afternoon. Coming from private business, we are adverse to debt. And the debt level that this county is decreasing on a very fast level, which in the end result will make us a healthier Weber County economy. So nobody likes tax increases. This is really a shift because we're allocating the dollars that were subsidized. The municipalities are subsidizing the county, which is fair and equitable. And not only fair and equitable, it's required by state statute. So I'm going to support that, Mr. Chair. And
very good.
I'd like to hear from Commissioner Harvey.
I appreciate that. Commissioner Harvey, do you have comments?
Sure. Thank you. You know, I appreciate the comments that were made today. You know, 25 years ago, when we moved from South Ogden City to unincorporated Weber County. I really liked that school tax back then. That worked out well for me and my family. My kids, all of them were attending public schools. Now all of them are contributing to paying taxes. I'm happy to say that. None of them have kids, and this is a plea that they might start, but none of them have kids contributing to that, but will. It's part of living in our society. I am respectful of that. Another gentleman spoke of haircuts. We talked today that currently our employees in our building inspections and are in our engineering departments, both who draw from the Municipal Services Fund. There have been 2 vacant positions, so those current employees are stepping up. We've given ourselves a haircut. We've looked at efficiencies. We've done that. I'm very comfortable and confident with the job that our existing employees are doing. I'm really happy about, and I'm proud to say that. In all of our departments, they get awards statewide and nationally because we're in the top, considered in the top 2% of the counties in the nation because of our efficiencies. So we've done that. We're not, and we still try, but we've done that. There is, if one thing we err, it's in our communication. We do a good job at that, but we could do better. Educating people about what's happening. I've been hearing about municipal services after having been an county employee for quite some time that there's been an imbalance. This is a correction to an imbalance that's occurred for a number of years, and most certainly since the state of Utah said cities can't subsidize unincorporated, nor can unincorporated subsidize cities. This is a tax shift, but a net result, a cut in taxes. And so through our budget hearings, I don't want the state to come in and take over what we're doing. I know that our being closer to the situation is better than having somebody in the state take over that. I support Mr. Hatch, you, and you, Mr. Park, from our clerk auditor's department and the jobs you've done very much, as well as your team, some of who are here today. You've done a great job with that. We have a wonderful team in Weber County. It's incredibly efficient here. And after a quarter of a century, it's my opinion that the people who work here are as good as we've had in the 25 years I've personally looked at that with my own eyes. They're doing a great job. So, Mr. Chair, those are my comments, and if ready, I'm willing to make a motion when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion, and this is a resolution. I'll make a motion that we adopt Resolution 59, adopting the Municipal Services Fund property tax increase for the calendar year 2020. And by the way, this negatively affects me and my household. But I'm happy to pay my share. I've been taught that. I've had to learn a lot in the last 3 years about government and spending, and as I understand this, this is a good thing. It's a hard personal nut to swallow. But it also is a great thing for 94% of the people who live in the cities of Weber County. They've been unfairly shouldering a burden that should have been mine for a number of years, and now's the right time to do that. So, Mr. Chair, that's my motion.
Very good.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Good, we have motion and a second.
Commissioner
Fatima?
Harvey,
Aye.
Commissioner Farrar,
Aye.
and Chair Jenkins.
Aye. Very good. Well, that was item 5A. What about the budget in general?
You want a resolution on, a motion on that now, or did you want a discussion?
Well, actually, the discussion we've had has not been on that budget. We've had several. That budget's been out. We've talked about it. We've held meetings on it. Yeah, I'm ready for a motion on that.
Yeah, I think we've had,
Enough discussion.
we've had some discussion. This was preliminary discussed, in the last 2 weeks or so, as I remember, County Commission. So this has been available for the public to review for some point in time, has it not, Scott?
For about a month.
For about a month. So this is public information. With that, Mr. Chair, I would move approval of Resolution 60, adopting the operating and capital budgets of Weber County for calendar year 2020.
Second?
Very good. I have a motion and a second.
Commissioner Harvey,
Aye.
Commissioner Farrar,
Aye.
and Chair Jenkins.
Aye. Very good. That finishes our business this evening. Commissioners, comments? Do either of you care to comment on anything?
Well, I would just like to thank our team. Stephanie's leaving, but thank her for the work she has done on this budget. Mr. Park, obviously Ricky and his staff. We've been working on this, as I recall, since about earlier mid-September.
Yeah.
And I can say without a doubt that every department was looked at very hard. Every budget from those departments was looked at significantly, including the sheriff's. And we know that that is a major cost, Mr. Haas, which I agree with you. And all I would say with that, I think that this commission is safe in saying that the same will continue for the foreseeable future, that we're going to take our job as budget overseers of your taxpayer dollars very seriously as we move forward, at least while this commission is together.
Thank you. You want to say anything else?
Good
Mr.
team.
Harvey.
No, we're good. I'm good.
Are you?
Yeah.
I would like to say I view this as a tax decrease for the year. Now, for those of you in the unincorporated, it's a tough pill to swallow because your taxes doubled. But for 94% of the county, we actually lowered taxes this year. And I view that as part of our responsibility as people who oversee this budget to not only not raise taxes, but when possible, to lower them. And we did that tonight for 94%. So with that, I'm done with my comments. Motion to adjourn is what I'm waiting for.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
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 We're adjourned.